Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bulbacast. A not so long time ago, in a Twitch stream not so far away, my fellow Bulbacasters and I had briefly discussed getting in a Star Wars episode in honor of May the 4th be with you. As you've probably all guessed by now, this is of course the Bulbacast episode about the recent Nintendo news. Not to worry though, this is also the Star Wars Bulbacast episode. Yes, indeed, today's episode will be a 2-for-1, where we will first discuss Star Wars, and then go into a little detail about the recent Nintendo news. As always, I have a fine group of panelists with me here today to discuss both Star Wars and the Nintendo news. Before going any further, it is, of course, time to address that giant Bulbasaur looming over all of us. Now, I'll admit, I had been wondering how I was ever going to top Evie's surprise guest appearance in the previous episode, when we did the live cast, and I think I may have just found a way to do it. Everybody, put your hands together and give a warm welcome to the one and only webmaster of Bulbagarden, Archaic.
Hello everyone.
Now, of course, with the big boss here, even I have to be on my very best behavior. Next up, making her return appearance, is one of Bulbagarden's chiefs of staff, Evie.
Hi guys, I'm back. Yeah, that whole guest appearance thing, I don't think it's going to stay a guest thing.
Well, we'll be happy to have you whenever you want to join us. And, as if I already didn't have enough people who can fire me here already, we've also got one of the deputy chiefs of staff and the head of the social media department, Rocket Queen.
Hey, long time no see. I'm glad to be back. Last couple sessions I couldn't make, but I definitely didn't want to miss Star Wars.
Alright, now luckily we've run out of people who outrank me, but not out of panelists. Much like the Jedi in Episode 6, both Glik and Saph have returned. Welcome. And last but not least, DarthWolf will actually be force projecting himself in all the way from the Netherlands. His answers are all pre-recorded, which is kinda why none of us ever respond to him and he never responds to us. So it's not that we're all ignoring him, it's just we all don't have his audio accessible right now.
Hey guys, DarthWolf here. Bulbastaff's own Sith puppy, as some like to call me. I'm moderator on the forum in both the Fun and Game and Worms section, and I'm a social media graphic artist. And as my name suggests, I'm a huge Star Wars fan.
Alright, so last but not least, I am, of course, your host, the magical extraterrestrial known as Maniacal Engineer. And with that ridiculously long intro out of the way, let's get to the questions, shall we? Question number 1. Which of the Star Wars movies have you watched? Let's start with Rocket Queen on this one.
All of them, including the Christmas special.
What kind of masochist are you to make yourself watch that?
I had to go for 100%, alright?
Wait, if you have 100%, that means you saw both of the Ewoks movies.
I've only seen one of them. I forgot there was 2.
Aha, you don't have 100% completion yet, then.
Alright, I guess I know what I'm doing next weekend.
Alright, Glik, what about you?
I've seen the main 8 movies now, and Rogue One. Haven't really seen any of the smaller ones, like that Clone Wars movie.
Okay. Saph?
I've seen the 8 episodes, and earlier today I watched Rogue One.
Okay.
And I watched a few episodes of Star Wars Rebels.
Evie?
The main movies, the main 9, episode 1, 8, and Rogue One. Plus, yeah, I've seen all of Clone Wars except the movie, and most of Rebels.
Archaic, what have you watched?
I've seen the original movies, I've seen the prequels, though I don't remember most of the prequels, so I think I must have just stricken them from my memory.
I wouldn't blame you.
It's a reasonable course.
Yeah, I've seen the new movies, so the ones intended as part of the trilogy, plus Rogue One. I've seen most of the Clone Wars, I think. But I haven't watched Rebels yet.
Alright. What about you, DarthWolf?
Well, of course I've seen every major Star Wars movie, from episode 1 to episode 8. Besides that, of course, I've also seen Rogue One. I've seen the Clone Wars animated movie, And I've also seen the Ewok movie trilogy.
And as for me, I've seen the original trilogy, the prequels, the 2 sequels, and Rogue One. I guess some of us have already kind of jumped the gun and started answering question 2, which was, what other parts of the Star Wars universe or franchise have you experienced? So let's start with Saph on that one.
Well, as I said, a few episodes of Star Wars Rebels, like the season 1, and I've played the Old Republic, and that's about all.
Archaic, what about you?
No, I think I've pretty much already answered that, haven't I?
I suppose you have, although, if you've played any of the video games or read any of the novels.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, true. I mean, I don't remember what novels I would have read. They would have been decades ago. I guess the Thrawn stuff. Everyone's read those. Some comics, that sort of thing.
If you have not read the Tron stuff, I'm revoking your geek card.
Ouch.
Yes, no, I've read the Thrawn stuff. I guess I've read some of the new comics. But yeah, no, I didn't really get too much into the extended universe.
Fair enough. Evie, what about you?
I've got quite a lot of books, and I've still reread the Tron books. Well, once in a while, I don't remember. I think it was 1 or 2 years ago the last time I reread the Tron trilogy. But yeah, it's just the books, and like I said, I've seen all of Clone Wars, most of Rebels. I've played a lot of the video games. I've read other books beside the Tron stuff, but not as worth reading. And yeah, I think that's the bulk of my Star Wars universe experience.
Glik, you're up.
I've played the Masters of Terrascasi.
Again, why would you do that to yourself?
Hey, I grew up poor. I played what I had available.
Okay, fair enough.
RQ, we've all been looking forward to this answer. What about you?
It's probably easier to ask me what I haven't experienced. I read the old school Dark Horse comics. I read the new Marvel comics. I've played most of the video games. I can't think of any off the top of my head that I haven't played. I read most of the books that came out back in the day, the EU stuff. I mean, it's always been my thing. I played hundreds of hours of the Old Republic, so yeah, I'm kind of a junkie.
But have you seen the animated series based on C-3PO and R2-D2?
I would not lower myself to that.
You've seen the holiday special, and you would not lower yourself to droids.
The holiday special was so bad, it was at least amusing, okay?
I'm just saying.
And you, Darth?
Well, the first major thing to come to my mind is the Clone Wars animated series based on the movie, which was an excellent show. Too bad it got cancelled during the 6th season. I've also seen the 2003 version of the Clone Wars animated series. Besides animation, I've also played some video games, of course, like Empire at War, the Force Unleashed series, Battlefront 2, the original one, to name a few. I've read partially the novelization of A New Hope, because I'm currently trying to expand to every expanded universe lore there is, both the old legends and the new EU canon. I've not really delved into any of the comics or original novels yet, which I do love to do, but just need to find the time for that. Oh, and I've also seen Rebels. I could forget about that one. Only the first season though. I haven't seen the later seasons yet, but I've heard they're great, so I'm excited for that.
I read a few of the EU books back when those were still considered canon. One that I remember featured Jabba's father, Zorba, and that's about all I remember of that. Aside from that, I have seen the entire Clone Wars animated series, at least the one that's still considered to be canon. I have not watched Rebels, although I have spoiled a few of the key scenes from that show. I suppose the biggest bit of the Star Wars franchise that I experience outside of the movies themselves would be my Star Wars Lego collection, which includes the most recently released Lego Ultimate Collector Series Millennium Falcon that I mentioned way back in Bulbacast episode 3. The one that's almost 7,500 pieces.
That we've all seen pictures of.
That's mostly what I do. I did end up buying myself a lightsaber at the most recent Wizard World convention that I went to. But yeah, that's about it for me. Next question is, what is your favorite Star Wars movie? This one's going to be controversial. We'll start with Archaic on this one.
Empire. How is this controversial?
Right?
I didn't think it would necessarily be too controversial, but I know that it's kind of divided between those people who say Empire and those people who say other things.
You mean the wrong answer?
So I guess it depends on whether or not we have people here who actually say other things.
Look, there's no problem with you having your opinion that Empire is not the best Star Wars movie, so long as you also recognize that your opinion is wrong.
Not which is the best Star Wars movie, is which is your favorite Star Wars movie. That is a notable difference.
Exactly.
That's fair enough. And yeah, the distinction between favorite and best is, that's the difference between objective and subjective. So, I guess objectively, Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie, but subjectively, what is the best or what is your favorite Star Wars movie is I suppose where we're drawing the distinction here. So yeah, I guess in your case, Archaic, it's Empire for both.
Yeah, it's Empire for both, and we'll put, I don't know, I'd actually say some of the movies in the new... you might say some of the new movies in the new trilogy are actually my favourites at the moment. I definitely like the direction that the franchise is going in right now. I need more alcohol to forget the prequels.
Don't we all?
Well, Evie, what about you? What's your favorite Star Wars movie?
Well, I'm going to go out of my way to specify that yes, Archaic is right. Empire is objectively the best one in terms of quality as a movie, but it's not my favorite. I would have to say that my favorite is, despite the Ewoks, despite Jabba's palace, which made for a first act that had little bearing in the rest of the movie, my favorite has got to be Jedi. Because Star Wars, for everything else, it's still a series about epic space battles and powerful, intense duels, and the conflict between the light and dark. And when you look for which movie is the best space battle, and the best lightsaber duel, and the best clash between light and dark, it's the same answer for all three. It's Return of the Jedi. The final duel between Luke and Vader is like this big, powerful, visceral sword fighting. Not the fancy shenanigans of the prequel, just two guys, their emotions, and they're trying the hardest to kill each other with pointy sticks.
Pointy laser sticks.
Yeah, pointy glow sticks. And there's this... I think this difference in soundtrack speaks for the difference between the duels of Jedi and the prequels. In the prequels, it's like this bombastic stuff. In Jedi, it's a somber, solemn thing that highlight how serious the whole thing is, and it makes for an amazing scene. It's the same in space. I mean, you've got space action in all the Star Wars film, but you only have so many big space battles, like big epic space battles, and Jedi is like leaps and bounds ahead of all the others. Although, I mean, Last Jedi is close behind because of it ended with an awesome finally, but Jedi still has the better space battle. I mean, Return of the Jedi. And it's also the best movie for the conflict between light and dark. You've got Luke cut between the two, you've got Vader cut between the two, and how you manage to get that much of a conflict on a faceless mask? I don't know, but they pulled it off.
Technically, the mask itself isn't faceless, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And it's like you see the conflict in the two of them. It's very vivid. And you have the conflict between the two of them on top, and you have Palpatine. It's like it's the best Star Wars movie because it's the movie. No, it's not the best, but it's my favorite Star Wars movie because it's the one that does the best job of doing what Star Wars does best.
Okay, then. I can't disagree with any of that. Glik, what about you?
The answer is Empire.
I like it.
All right, fair enough. RQ?
Okay, so we're gonna take this a little bit into left field here. The best Star Wars movie is Empire, as has been stated, and you really have to just accept that A New Hope is the reason that any of this exists. But I'm gonna say that my favorite Star Wars movie is actually the one that isn't even a Star Wars movie. My favorite Star Wars movie is Rogue One, and I think it's because I'm a sucker for heist films. I've always loved those cops versus criminals movies, Italian Job, French Connection, those kind of movies. And Rogue One was just so much fun for me.
Fun? That's the one emotion I would put not Rogue One giving me.
Hey, fun to watch. Fun to watch. Probably not fun for the people that participated in that movie.
Well, they all died, but...
Well, yeah, but it was a blast. I loved it.
Yes, it was a blast.
It was a very big blast.
A Death Star blast.
I didn't even mean to do that. But...
Nice work. You're turning into me.
Thank you. I really am a good inspector. But yeah, no, to me, Star Wars for me is I just want to sit back and have just an amazing time watching that movie. And for me, Rogue One did a phenomenal job of just entertaining me and just bringing me into that world.
Would
for 2
someone
hours.
please think of the Bothans?
Wrong, Death Star.
All right, Saph, what about you?
Well, I don't really have much to add to what Evie said, because that's exactly what I wanted to say. So yeah, Jedi is for me my favorite, because it's the one that has the most epic battles, I think. So yeah, what Evie said.
Okay. And DarthWolf, what about you?
My favorite Star Wars movie is definitely Episode 3, Return of the Sith. As you might have already guessed given my avatar as Mewtwo, I love villains, I love the evil side. Although you might then expect that I would love The Empire Strikes Back, it's still a good movie and focused about how they take back on the heroes and have a victory there. Episode 3 does give the best of the best in my opinion. I personally like the transition of Anakin going from good to evil, and seeing the transition and how he switches and breaks basically to the dark side inside him. Besides that, especially as a kid, I just loved the lightsaber duels. It was like my favorite part. Can't blame me for that, I guess. And Episode 3 has the most duels in that, so back then that was the main reason. Now that I'm a bit older though, looking back at it, I would still say it's Episode 3 just for the fact to see Anakin transition to the dark side. And you gotta agree, Anakin versus Obi-Wan, both visually and musically, is just amazing in my opinion. Besides that, if you compare the era of the Galactic Civil War, the original trilogy, versus the Clone Wars, the prequel trilogy, I gotta give it to the Clone Wars trilogy. This is more interesting to me in my opinion. Might have been boosted by the Clone Wars show, but I personally think that those armies and the fact that there are more Jedi and Sith being involved gives it a more interesting timeline in my opinion, and therefore also boosts my choice for the prequels, and therefore mostly Episode 3.
As for me, I'm going to go with the crowd. Well, I suppose it's not the crowd, but I'm going to go with the popular opinion, Empire Strikes Back. No questions asked. I think, it's very weird for a middle movie to actually do as well as Empire Strikes Back did, but it somehow managed to build off the previous episode, have its own little contained story, and leave plenty of room and need for resolution to be done in the third part of the trilogy. Because, again, those middle parts of the trilogy are the most awkward because you don't have, you're not starting at the beginning of the story and you're not ending the story. You're kind of literally in the middle. And, Empire had a lot of character development and introduced some new characters and, a lot of interesting defining moments, plus Muppet Yoda. You really can't get better than Muppet Yoda in Empire Strikes Back.
Muppet Yoda in Last Jedi wasn't bad.
But he was only there for like a little bit.
Yeah, but it was a very important little bit.
The secret texts!
He kicked Luke's ass once again. Even in ghost forms, Yoda still kicks Luke's ass.
Well, that's Yoda's job. It's literally in his job description.
It really is.
Yeah, it is.
But, I guess I still like him best in Empire Strikes Back, because he had more than just one defining moment in Empire Strikes Back. His whole when 900 years, well, I guess that was in Return of the Jedi, but
best film.
But his whole judge me by my size, do you? His whole you will be. He was just really, and his whole act at the beginning before he revealed himself to Luke, where he was just messing around in the camp. Come on, that was just funny.
Yeah, no, Yoda in Empire Strikes Back was great. It's just a shame that then the prequel came along and sort of did a act job on Yoda. I was glad for Last Jedi bringing him back on track.
Well, I guess that's the nice thing about things happening in the future, is you can't counteract what they did in the past. Well, I suppose you can, but that would probably be Doctor Who and not Star Wars.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Which I was going to say, let's not get into that wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Let's not.
No, let's just move on to our next question.
Rebels already came pretty close, so let's not get any closer.
Yeah. So let's just move on to our next question, which is, are you a Jedi or a Sith? Obviously, we all have to choose between the light side and the dark side, so which would we choose? Evie, we're going to start with you on that one.
Light side, yes. Jedi, no. I'm lawful good, so I'm like, Sith, no way. They're utterly selfish. I just don't get with their whole, gotta dominate everything, blah, blah, blah. But the Jedi Code is so completely screwed up. It denies everything that makes humans humans. It's all about repressing yourself, burying the stuff that's make you who you are, and that's so destructive. It's not creating a light side of people who are for the balance. It's creating generation of messed up Jedi who believe that just slipping up a little bit will forever dominate their destiny. So at that point, you might as well just go Sith, because dark side's gonna dominate your destiny anyway. It's a destructive system for the Jedi, for the galaxy, and Luke in Last Jedi was entirely right. It's all the Jedi completely screwed up, and it's all on them that the Sidious and Vader and all that stuff happened. So yeah, I would light side, but not Jedi.
All right. Glik, what about you?
Is being a smuggler who can make the Kessel Run in fewer than 8 parsecs an option?
8.
I suppose it would be.
No, because fewer than 8 parsecs would be considerably faster than Han Solo, and that's not allowed.
Oh, well, fine then. So I guess that option is not allowed.
Isn't a parsec a measure of distance rather than time?
Yes, it is. It is.
That's the joke.
No, the joke.
It is, yes. It is, yes.
It is entirely a measure of distance and not in time.
The actual lore created after the fact, after it was realized it was complete nonsense.
Also, 8 parsecs is impossible based on the actual lore, but we won't need to get into that.
No, originally the original lore was that Anne was just pulling a fast one and a bunch of yokels who didn't know what parsec meant.
Yes.
Well, didn't they try to explain that somehow he did it using black holes or what have you?
You don't need to mention that.
Yes, if they involve black holes, it really is a whole dumb thing.
Yes, it's a whole really dumb thing.
The official story is that the Kessel Run involves running through black holes and the safe path is longer, but Anne and the Falcon managed to do it by a shorter route that skirted closer to the black holes, so that's why it's impressive. Really, I prefer the version where Anne is just trying to bullshit his way past, which is what the original script was.
Oh, I definitely prefer that version too.
We'll get there, we'll get there. Relax. We'll get there.
Yeah, we have a question coming up. Don't be too hasty to shoot.
Yes, well, we have lots of issues with Han's actions being retconned in future versions, but we don't need to get into that yet.
So, Glik, your option is just to be a smuggler.
Or, what, is Dark Jedi an option?
I suppose.
Yeah, sure, let's go with that.
All right.
Isn't that the worst of both worlds?
No, I think it.
As far as I know, you're just, like, a dickhead who knows how to use the Force.
Nah, I think you still have to obey the Jedi code, but you're evil.
That's precise.
Well, no, Sith follow a specific code and there's only 2 of them and blah, 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 blah.
Well, if you're evil, you're not part of the Jedi Council or whatever.
But you're still a Jedi. It's the difference between a dark Jedi and a Sith.
They're almost as bad as the Jedi.
Yeah, that's very precise. All right. So Glik is a dark Jedi. RQ, what about you?
Since Grey Jedi is a cop-out, I am gonna go with, drumroll please, the Sith.
No.
Peace is a lie, there's only passion. Through passion I gain strength, through strength I gain power. I'm gonna quote the rest of the Sith code later, but basically,
when you look it up.
I actually don't need to. I don't need to look it up because I've played enough Sith and tabletops where the whole thing is just like ingrained in my brain at this point. But it speaks to me more than the Jedi Code, which, as we sort of displayed earlier, is just garbage and nonsense. And to me, the Sith that are displayed in the EU are far more interesting, in some cases, of course, not all cases, in some cases, than the just like cartoonishly evil sort of Palpatine, like I'm gonna use Force Lightning and destroy the galaxy kind of people, where it's more like an emotional state of being, where they feed on their emotions to gain power, rather than sort of repressing their emotions like the Jedi do. So it's a much more natural state of being. So I would definitely pick Sith, considering that Grey Jedi is a cop-out.
Yeah, it is.
Saph, what about you?
Well, I'm a cop in real life, so Jedi, I guess. Though I definitely need Erza's lightsaber blaster from Star Wars Rebels, because that's awesome.
All right. Archaic, what about you?
Well, if Knights of the Old Republic taught me anything, it's that the alignment of Sith is stupid evil.
It's lawful stupid versus stupid evil.
I mean, seriously, every dark side option is basically kill them all in cruel and stupid ways, as opposed to iron fist in a velvet glove.
No, stupid evil versus lawful stupid.
I can't be Jedi. Their whole system is stupid. I can't be...
It's stupid evil versus stupid good.
Pretty much.
Yeah!
Yeah, pretty much. It's a choice between two horrible options, and, well, only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Yeah!
See, I was going to make that joke, now I can't do it. Beaten to the punchline.
Yeah, see, here's the problem with bringing me on. I'm now going to make far worse puns than you ever did.
Excellent, excellent. So I can't be fired for making puns. That's good news, actually.
No, you can if you upstage me.
Oh, well, fine. Then I will be quiet.
Or if you annoy me. Also, keep in mind, though, Archaic, that on the staff server he's known as the Marvelous Emu. As an Australian, you're not allowed to defeat him.
That was Evie's idea, not mine.
Oh, I can defeat him. I just can't use machine guns to do it.
For the kids listening at home, look up the Emu War on Google, and I guarantee you're gonna have a blast.
Like the Death Star.
At Australia's expense.
Alright. Anyway, I really don't think I need to ask you this question, but I'm going to ask anyway. What about you, DarthWolf?
Do I really have to answer that? Come on, I'm the Sith puppy. I'm DarthWolf. I'm not betraying myself to the Jedi. No, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. In all seriousness, no, as I said before, I just love the dark side, love the evil characters in general, no matter what their franchise is. So yeah, I gotta give it to the Sith.
As expected. Anyway, the dark side has cookies, so I'll choose Sith.
Alright! There is only two. The Master and the Apprentice.
Aren't the Sith supposed to be like just some weirdo alien monsters that look like they come from a metal album?
Oh my god, we're not going to get into that one either, because that's a whole long thing.
Anyway, technically down we have 3 Dark Jedi right now. So one of you has to be killed by the other 2.
What? Dark Jedi's not Sith.
Dark Jedi's not Sith. We're still good.
That's made very clear in the EU.
Alright, so I think that about does it for that question. Let's move on to the next question, which is, who is your favorite Star Wars character? Glik, we'll start with you on this one.
I wonder who that's gonna be.
Probably gonna have to go with Han Solo.
No surprises there.
In the original trilogy, he's like the normal guy. Luke's a kid who's like got his head stuck in the clouds. He's happy to be on an adventure, everything. Leia's all super serious about the war, and Han's just going along with it, trying to make a bit of money off of it, and just keep his neck on, or his head on his neck.
He ultimately does, even if he does get frozen in carbonite. His head is still attached to his neck. RQ, what about you?
Alright, once again, I'm going to go into left field again, because that's, it's no fun going with the obvious answers. I'm going to go with...
Jar Jar.
There is a line, and you just crossed that line.
I may need to change my answer.
Nope, nobody has crossed any line here.
My favorite character from the Legacy comics is Cade Skywalker.
That doesn't count.
What do you mean it doesn't count?
Because it's not canon anymore.
It's canon to me, and I'm going to explain why.
You'll be fired out of that canon very soon.
It's Han Solo with a bit of a dark streak, and he's got force powers. That's all I gotta say.
Isn't that pretty much what Kyle Katarn is?
Yeah, but Kyle Katarn sucks.
So Kyle Katarn minus the Mary Soonest?
Hands up, you're fired.
Well, okay then.
That's actually a great way to put it. That's exactly what Cade is.
Isn't Cade the one... Is that the character who's like future descendant thing?
Yes. That he's from the Legacy comics, yep.
The guy addicted to drugs?
Yep.
On second thought, I'm not surprised at Sanzo's pick.
Remember, he gets better. He gets better.
Alright, let's just move on. Saph, what about you?
Well, I was gonna say Jar Jar for the joke.
But it was ruined.
But, yeah, to be honest, I'd say Han Solo, too. Cause,
Alright.
yeah, it's like the normal guy, but who does awesome stuff. So yeah, it's the guy that doesn't have any powers but still manages to be awesome. So yeah, I like him.
Very fair. Archaic, what about you?
I've never really thought about it, to be perfectly honest. If I have to pick a favourite off the top of my head,
Jabba the Hutt.
R2-D2. There you go.
That's a good choice. That's my second favorite choice.
It's not a bad choice.
Everyone loves R2.
I actually was right at the beginning of this, I was going to go into a whole conversation or include a whole conversation about how the actual protagonist of all three Star Wars trilogies so far was R2-D2, but I cut that out because nobody wants to hear that.
And it's wrong because of the Force Awakens.
Yeah, I was gonna say that theory works for the first two. It's the latest movies that unfortunately ruined that.
It kind of worked for Last Jedi. It just doesn't work for Force Awakens.
No, R2 still has something important to do in The Force Awakens. He's just asleep for most of it.
Yeah, so he's not the protagonist. Protagonists don't spend the whole movie asleep.
Sleeping Beauty did.
I was waiting for someone to say that. I was wondering who was going to do it.
Of course it was going to be me.
First off, she doesn't actually spend the whole movie asleep. Most of the movie is about her falling asleep, and then they switch character to the prince.
I just look at it this way. If R2-D2 is my favourite character, I don't have to worry about my favourite character dying by the end of this new trilogy.
This is true. R2 has already survived 2 explosions, or getting shot twice.
R2 has plot shields, just like C-3PO. You don't kill off the comic relief.
Well, that explains why Jar Jar was still alive, although one could argue Jar Jar is not actually very funny.
Jar Jar is actually Supreme Leader Snoke.
Excuse me?
Jar Jar was Snoke.
So they killed him off!
I kind of wanted to see that happen. I really did.
Actually, if I can revise my favourite character, then it would be Jar Jar Binks if the Darth Jar Jar theory had become reality.
I would have. I think I would have loved that too. I really would have. But as it stands, yeah, no. Evie, what about you?
Well, since we're discussing Jar Jar, I'm going to say that the Darts and Droids version of Jar Jar Binks is awesome. But he is not my answer to this question. Honestly, up until a few years ago, probably I've gone with Han Solo or maybe R2 like everyone else, because I'm original like that. But I don't know if it's being more in touch with my feminine side, which I obviously am, or if it's the fact that the sequels really improve the character, but I'd have to go with Leia. Because while I was the biggest fan of the princess, in general, Leia is just awesome. So yeah, she'd be my choice. And yes, I know that this means that my favorite is not going to survive this trilogy, obviously.
Hey, my favorite doesn't exist anymore, so I think you're all safe.
There is that.
All right. Darth, who's your favorite character? I think this is another one that's fairly obvious, but I'll ask you anyway.
If you've seen me around on the forum, or have been paying attention just now, you probably know that my answer will be Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker in general. For those of you who don't know, my avatar on the forum is a custom-made avatar by our own staff artist, noworry, in which she has a drawing of both Mewtwo and Darth Vader as its Pokemon trainer. Those two being some of my favorite fictional characters. As I said, I just love villains. As for why I say both Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker, I like him as a villain, but I also like the whole process he takes from episode 1 through 6 and see his transition from fear to anger to hatred to suffering. We all know the line by Yoda. But basically just seeing him from a small good kid developing to a stronger adult, still being a good guy, yet slow transitioning to the dark side, and just seeing that character transition. So from my point of view, Darth Vader is just the main character in the trilogy. Well, not the trilogy, but the whole movie franchise before the new sequels came, in which it was all about him and how he changed over the years. And therefore, I do like him as a character throughout the whole series. His best form, so to speak, in my opinion, would be when he is Darth Vader before the suit. Although his suit has a fearsome and menacing appearance, he would be more powerful before the suit, and therefore would be more interesting to me, as I just love power.
Yes, well. Anyway, I actually will take things off in left field and not say Jar Jar. But my favorite character is actually Cad Bane. And I'll admit, I really did not like him at first, but he grew on me. I ended up liking his personality. I love his absolute smugness and how ruthless he can be. I like his equipment, I like his outfit, and most importantly, I like his sense of hat style. I really do.
Yeah, he does have awesome hats. That's a good choice, actually.
Who is that?
He doesn't. He's the main bounty hunter from the Clone Wars. He kind of became, after Jango Fett died and while Boba was still a kid, he was kind of the main quote unquote Jedi killer bounty hunter during the Clone Wars. And although unlike Jango and Boba, he didn't wear the Mandalorian armor, he was still a very, very effective bounty hunter. He plans things really well, he uses his team and resources very effectively, and he gets the job done. And then there was the fact that he literally killed another bounty hunter just because he wanted his hat. You don't mess with Cad Bane's hats.
It's a sweet hat.
Yes.
He's basically a Western character in space.
He really is, and I think that I like him. He's a tactician. He thinks. Plus, if we look at some of the unreleased footage from what was going to be an unreleased Clone Wars season, we actually see he gets into a duel with Boba Fett and is the reason that Boba has the dent in his helmet. So that's pretty neat, although it's heavily implied that he died as a result of that battle, which explains why he doesn't show up anywhere else. So yeah, that's my choice.
Actually, if we're going to Clone Wars, I'm going to include an honorable mention for Houndoom, because you can't go wrong with a space pirate voiced by Minsk from Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, I did say favorite Star Wars character. I didn't say favorite Star Wars movie character.
Yeah, so I'll give an honorable mention to Houndoom.
Yeah, I got that memo for sure.
Yes, you did. In fact, the character that you mentioned is no longer technically a Star Wars character.
So I guess I should probably pick a favorite that everyone's actually heard of.
It might help.
And probably, and this is not exactly a controversial pick, I don't think, for some of us older fans, but Revan. I really like Revan, and I know it's sort of a player character, but what the MMO did with Revan was a very interesting look at what happens when someone is corrupted by the dark side and yet is really struggling to hold on to the light. He's almost a mirror to Anakin in a way, except that while Revan is on the verge of a fall, he doesn't actually fall. And it's a very interesting look at how someone can actually resist the call of the dark side.
Resistance is futile. Oops, sorry, wrong franchise again.
Yes.
All right, moving on.
Not be assimilated.
Yes, moving on from that one. This question will hopefully not be a very controversial question. I said we'd get here, and we finally have. Did Han shoot first?
Obvious.
We'll start with RQ on this one.
Yep.
Saph?
Yeah? What?
Did Han shoot first?
I don't know, I wasn't there.
Cop.
That's a cop-out.
He's a cop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why is there any question about this anyway? He shot first. He did. That's all there is.
I guess the rest of us don't have to answer now, but...
Actually, I do have an answer.
Okay. Evie, what about you then?
Well, you have to ask, was Prometheus the son of Iapetus? Or was Venus born of Seabride? And was punishment for stealing fire Pandora's jar? Because yes and no. That's the thing with mythologies, and Star Wars is a modern mythology, a mythos, is they often give different contradictory account of the same event.
Yes, and the original account is the correct account, and the subsequent accounts are Han Solo trying to have good PR now that his family's in control of the New Republic.
I like that interpretation. I like that interpretation.
I really like
I'm going
that
to stick
too.
with my answers that there are plenty. A mythology can have many different and contradictory answers to the same question. And there's a version of the story where Anne shot first, and a version where he shot last, and a version where they both kind of shot at the same time. And they're all versions of the story, and which one you choose to believe is entirely up to you. And fandoms waste way too much time debating on what is canon and what is not canon, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so let me have Kate Skywalker then.
No.
Word of God explicitly said it's not canon. We don't overrule authorial intent, except where they're just completely stupid.
Exactly, this is a case where it's completely stupid.
Alright, Glik, would you care to weigh in?
Not really. Just that it doesn't really make sense for the other guy to shoot first. They're like 2 feet apart from each other, and he's a trained bounty hunter. He's not gonna miss if he shoots first.
Yeah, he's the chief joke in Star Wars, so...
I thought the Stormtroopers were the chief joke in Star Wars.
It's kind of a tie between... I mean, I'm thinking that at 2 feet, a Stormtrooper might actually hit his target. Whereas we know that Greedo did not.
Well, would in the prequels, won't in the sequels.
Anyway, Darth, would you care to weigh in?
Classic question. But yeah, I would say Han shot first. I mean, come on, it was in the original shooting that he shot first. And although it might have been changed later, that's not the way it was intended. And it was the way to show that he would be willing to shoot no matter the cost. That's part of his character. That's what showed him off in his first scene, defining who he is. You can't just change that. Although it is changed in the recent movies and made more subtle over the years. It's like, currently, if you pay attention, it's like still Greedo shot first, but a normal viewer wouldn't see it and seems like they shot simultaneously. So, no matter what, even for a casual viewer, you can just think that he shot just a split second first and therefore won the shoot off.
Anyway, in my opinion, unquestionably Han shot first. I really don't hold much stock in the so-called remastered versions of the original trilogy. And, you know, again, in my opinion, what the remastered versions do is they just add needless special effects, they add needless CGI, they add all of that stuff that really... You know, Star Wars, the original trilogy, didn't need to be good. Star Wars, the original trilogy, had a good story. It had good, solid character development. And when you change something like this, which is a defining moment of one of your lead characters, you're really messing something up, and that's completely unacceptable. But speaking of Han Solo, there is a new Han Solo movie coming out. So what are we expecting to see from that? We'll start with Saph on this one.
Well, first I'm expecting it to be released, and then I will see and make my opinion on it. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not expecting much. It'll just be a movie like the others, I guess. If I enjoy it, that's fine. If I don't, well.
All right. Archaic, what about you?
I have absolutely no idea because I'm staying away from any kind of spoilers or anything for these movies until they're actually released.
All right. I mean, I'm the same way, but do you have any idea as to what they might include in the movie?
So long as it's better than the horrible Corellian trilogy of novels, I'll take it.
Oh God, why did you bring that up?
Fair enough.
What? I brought it up because I wanted to remind you just how bad it could get.
I suppose having a worst case scenario is kind of a good thing going into something like this.
Oh no, that's not even the worst case scenario with Star Wars.
True. True.
What are those stupid things called? The Vong or whatever it is?
Yuuzhan Vong!
Don't mention the Yuuzhan Vong. They were awful, but not as awful as Darth Cadus.
I think we are getting a tiny bit off track here, so...
Anyway, back to Han Solo. I have no idea what I'm expecting. Honestly, it's just... I watched the trailers and they look... Woo, plenty of flashy stuff, but... They're not giving me much of a sense for what the movie is, beside maybe an heist movie meeting a western in space, kind of? I don't know. Honestly, it's probably the least interesting of the Star Wars movies to me so far. Like, before seeing it, it's the one that least interests me. So we'll see.
Alright. Glik?
I expect it'll be a pretty decent popcorn movie. Nothing special, really. They're strange they're putting it out in May instead of, like, December like they did with Rogue One. So...
I mean, if they're going to bother to put a movie out in May, they should have at least done it on May 4th instead of May 25th, but that's just me.
Well, it would have been too close to the Avengers.
1 week out.
I guess, yeah, you don't want to get overshadowed, but...
Especially not by your own company.
Well, that's exactly it, yeah. It would have been one of those
keep
things.
Forgetting, Disney owns everything. But yeah, so I guess that makes sense. But still, you're right, it is an odd choice for it to be in May and not December, but it is what it is.
Is there anything else coming out in May? Like, big?
Not that I know of off the top of my head.
I don't think so, but I'm no cinema buff.
So they want to make sure it has no competition. That sounds like they don't put much stock in it.
And nobody would go up, nobody would go up against Star Wars anyway. It's kind of like...
Isn't there Deadpool too?
Deadpool is in June, I think. Yeah, because I think Disney's basically alternating Avengers, Star Wars, Deadpool over the next 3 months.
Well, isn't that nice? Anyway, RQ, what about you?
As someone whose favorite piece of narrative fiction, period, is a space western, aka Cowboy Bebop, which I will have to bring up at some point in a future cast, I am really...
That's a detective noir, mostly.
Really, really hopeful. It's also a space western, though. I mean, the way that, like, the bounty hunters, the big shot show, it's clearly a western at heart. Not as much as Trigun, but...
Yeah, most people, when they think space western, they'd probably go for Firefly.
Well, yeah, but Firefly's also not an anime. They'd probably pick Trigun over as, like, the space western anime, but Bebop also takes a lot of narrative hints from it. Anyways, I'll get back onto the actual topic.
Please do.
I'm praying that it's good. I am praying to every god that I can find on Google over the next few weeks, hoping that it's good. I think it will be. I was kind of out until I saw the most recent scene that they put up at one of those cons. I forget which one, where it's Han and Lando playing for the Millennium Falcon, and I think that was the first scene that showed us anything in terms of like what the movie was gonna be, besides shooty action and bright lights. And I think Glover really nails Lando. That's like clear just from that scene. Like, he's got the swagger, he's got the charm. He nails that role. And it does look like that. I was kind of out on Alden Ehrenreich, I think his name is, on Han, but he looked like he had the right sort of, just like Lando, that swagger, that charm. It looks like they have it. So I'm pretty hopeful.
All right. What about your thoughts, Darth?
This is actually an interesting question. Normally when a new movie releases, or at least with 7, 8 and Rogue One, as I can remember those most recently, is that I had my questions about it, but I had no doubt I would just love it and would be amazed by it, no matter what other people would say, even though they might say that it would suck. With the Han Solo movie, I'll most likely just still love it. My main issue with it is that because Harrison Ford is no longer the Han Solo, it's gonna have a feeling of like, you're Han Solo, but you're not. It's like seeing Indiana Jones, but secretly knowing that it's Han Solo. Just see the specific character. No matter what Harrison Ford plays, you just see his specific character as Han Solo. And you probably have it with many other different actors. But this movie will have him removed. I get that you need to change him, of course. It's a younger version of Han Solo before episode 4 takes place. But the fact that it's a different person might give it like a weird vibe. It's not the real Han Solo, and therefore just feels off. I'm definitely gonna watch it as soon as I can when it releases, that's for sure. And I'll definitely enjoy it. It's just that I have to see how that different vibe will feel. Only time will tell, I guess.
And as for me, like I mentioned, I've stayed away from all the trailers. But as far as things that I do expect, RQ, you actually covered one of those and said that that's in the trailer, so I was expecting to see how Han won the Millennium Falcon. Maybe a little bit more history of the Millennium Falcon, including what it actually is doing in Episode 3, because I believe it actually does show up in Episode 3 very, very briefly, going into the the Republic Senate building. And the other thing is, I'm actually hoping to see the Kessel Run and see if they can actually explain an official canon reason for how he can actually do that in 12 parsecs, or, if we mentioned before that he was just trying to bullshit a couple of local yokels. Whatever Disney comes up with, though, I don't actually expect it to make any sense. Will it be a good movie? Probably. Will it be a good Star Wars movie? In my opinion, Disney's kind of hit or miss on that, so we'll see. Yeah, that's about it for this one. All right, the next one is very, very vague and very, very broad, but I think we're going to have a little bit of fun with this one. What have you liked about the various Star Wars movies? We will start with Archaic on this one.
Jeez, that puts me on the spot. I mean, keep in mind, I haven't watched most of these movies in the better part of a decade. What I like about them in particular, I don't know. I guess when I first watched the Star Wars movies as a kid, and when I would have watched them repeatedly as a kid, when I was young, I was really into more fantasy than sci-fi, but Star Wars always felt like one of my fantasy stories in a sci-fi setting, which I found interesting.
Well, it's because it is. It's not science fiction. It's fantasy in space.
It's space fantasy, yeah. There is a difference, and maybe one of these days I'll get around to explaining the minute technical details, but nobody wants to hear that. We've already been recording for a long time, and there's still a lot more to go. Evie, what about you?
Honestly, it's just such a vague question. I'm going to have to go with the Chinese subs. Because that view of the West was just awesome.
I knew that was going to come up.
How can you not love all the memeable quote that came out of that disaster?
Do not want.
He isn't my behind. What is the other one? We are for the big. It's just so perfect in its awfulness. It's like, and yeah, of course, I've liked the space battles and space battles and space battles, but yeah, no.
I think that you have you mentioned a lot of the things that you liked about the Star Wars movies in general when you were talking about Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I did.
All right, Glik, what about you?
I'm kind of the opposite of Archaic, where I liked science fiction, didn't really much dig fantasy when I was younger. So Star Wars has just the trappings of science fiction, but it's got that just pretty simple but fun fantasy storyline going through it that I enjoyed.
All right. RQ?
I'm gonna keep this simple. I just like them because they're fun. I mean, I could go into all sorts of narrative things and spend the next half hour talking about why this is like one of my favorite things ever, but I think the simplest way to do it is just say that I just have so much fun watching these movies. Like, the action and the characters, and there's just the charm, and they do such a good job of sort of layering a bit of comedic relief into these, like, serious pitched action sequences, and it's just an epic narrative, and it just takes you into the experience, and for that 2 hours, as I said earlier with my Rogue One description, I just have so much fun being immersed in the experience, and that's what I like.
Even when that experience is Jar Jar Binks stepping in something that he shouldn't have on the Tatooine ground.
Something Misa Doo-doo? I forget that line.
Something like that.
So how was the immersion for the Christmas special?
That I watched in a darker time in my life, and that's all we're going to say about that.
Well, no, the question is it a darker time of your life because you watched it, or were you watching it because you were in a bad place?
A little column A, a little column B, not gonna lie.
Did it make it worse?
It definitely made it worse.
Well, I know I'm never watching it then. Saph, what about you?
Well, I like the universe, like stuff being set in battleships and the like, and though there are some physics aberrations, I like the futuristic setting, and I like the advanced civilization, like people speak different languages, like alien languages, but most people can understand them without any problem. Even the droids, people can understand the droids even though they're just beeping. I like that.
Okay. And Darth, you're up.
There's a lot to like about the Star Wars movies. I mean, come on, it's Star Wars. From epic space battles, to lightsaber battles, to the whole concept of the Force. No, seriously though. But to just mention a few things, lightsaber duels are always some epic highlights, although one can be better than the other. And one is more appealing in a visual way, like Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul, while the other is more of a mental way, like Luke versus Darth Vader. And in my opinion, you combine both of two worlds of the best lightsaber duel of Anakin and Obi-Wan. Besides that, space battles are always epic to see, and redeeming quality of episode 1 is pod racing. It's a fun little aspect. In terms of characters besides Darth Vader, it's always fun to have the classic duo of R2-D2 and C-3PO in there, bringing good adventures with them. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi, specifically the Ewan McGregor one, the pre-sequel version. Besides, he's like the main, my main good guy, favorite character, so to speak. Emperor Palpatine is amazing, Yoda's amazing. It just, if you want to describe a certain fictional character, you have like a thought of them and just say Palpatine or Yoda, everyone just knows what kind of character you have in mind. Besides that, Star Wars is a great resource of quotes, which we can use day by day, which I personally use. And besides that, it's just the fact that it's been there for so long, over 40 years now already, and it's still part of this big community. It's like Pokemon, yet twice the size. I do certainly hope it will continue for ages, and that in the future I can show this to my children and grandchildren as like one of the greatest franchises, not just in movie, but just in general fiction, to show it off to the future generations. Besides that, I also think that just as with Lord of the Rings, who does with fantasy, Star Wars sets a standard and a universal, well-known aspect of science fiction, or well, space opera if you want to be more technical, and set them how it should be, in my opinion, and what you can expect from it. But besides being science fiction, I just love the aspect of adding the Force to it. Because I'm both a sucker for fantasy and science fiction. And combining those two into one concept, basically, having both magic and futuristic, well, past science combined, just makes it for one great universe.
As for me, I love the original trilogy, especially the non-remastered versions. I do think that those movies will remain timeless despite the simplistic special effects. I always will prefer Muppet Yoda over CGI Yoda. No questions asked there. I think that the overall plot and some of the major twists along the way from the original series are the best out of any of them in any of the movies so far. It also has some of the best characters in the entire franchise, including Han Solo, Boba Fett, and Grand Moff Tarkin. I have not really been that impressed with the new trilogy so far, but The Last Jedi actually did do a few things right. First of all, I appreciate the fact that it distinguished Kylo Ren as a villain instead of the Vader wannabe that we saw in The Force Awakens, and managed to get rid of his ridiculous helmet at the same time.
Nolan said we've got ridiculous pecs.
Yes, well. The battle between Luke and Kylo at the end of that movie was also a very good moment, and we finally got to see Jedi Master Luke Skywalker in battle. And he does so not just to protect himself. In fact, he actually is not protecting himself. He's deliberately putting himself in harm's way for others, as a true wielder of the light side of the Force.
It is the first time we see a true light Jedi Master fighting a battle like a Jedi Master.
Because everything you see in the Clone Wars, and part of the reason why the Jedi collapsed in the first place was they were acting more like generals and soldiers than keepers of the peace.
Consumed by the dark side the Jedi were, as Yoda says in Rebels.
Well, I haven't seen Rebels, so...
No, but I'm making the point that they were bordering on Dark Jedis or even on Sith by that point, because they had gone completely... They were completely focused on winning the war.
Yes, and, well, they won the war, they lost the battle? Wait, I think it goes the other way around.
They lost the peace.
Yes. But anyway, so I guess getting back to Luke, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of it, with some of the character decisions that they made regarding Luke, but I will admit that PTSD Luke did make a lot of sense, given the backstory for Kylo Ren, given, the Jedi's flawed system, and given a lot of other little details. Would I have loved to see Luke Skywalker immediately jump back into action, as soon as Rey came up to him? Yeah, I would have loved that. Would I have loved to have seen Luke kicking more butt in The Last Jedi than he actually did? Yes, I would have. But what I saw worked. And it really did work both within the confines of the universe and what they'd kind of done, from the why would Luke have gone into hiding, or why would Luke have gone off to be alone if he saw the First Order coming along and he wanted to battle it? So I guess, it even kind of makes sense within the new trilogy for Luke to just have some kind of reason to not be in there fighting. And again, I don't necessarily agree that was the best direction to go with the character, but I'm not going to say it was the wrong way to go, and I think that it does work, and it actually worked better than most people will give it credit for. What else? I also agree with RQ that Rogue One is a good movie, even though the final outcome was fairly obvious, considering we never see any of those characters in any of the future movies. The thing that I really did like about Rogue One, though, is there's a very brief scene of Darth Vader during his quote-unquote free time, where we see that his actual main base of operations is on Mustafar, which is an interesting callback to where he actually became Darth Vader. Well, not where he actually became Darth Vader, but where Darth Vader, where he lost his humanity, as it were. And, of course, it was very good to see Tarkin again, even if it was CGI. So that's my opinion. Let's move on to another very vague question that we're all probably going to have long answers for. What has disappointed you about the Star Wars franchise. Evie, we'll start with you on this.
Oh boy, that's. Well, the prequels, obviously, because the prequels, but more specifically, I think it's really the way the Jedi were handled in them. And I like what Clone Wars, especially Rebels, did afterward to try and repair the damage, but the Jedi in the prequel trilogy are so messed up. I'm glad Last Jedi actually said, yeah, no, it was messed up. And I'm glad Rebels said that the Jedi in the Clone Wars were basically going to the dark side, because otherwise, like, for the original trilogy, Jedi were cool. They were badass. They were the people you wanted to be. But look at how many of us actually said we wanted to be Jedi in that question earlier? I think one of us.
Yeah, and that was Saph, the cop.
Yeah, uh, the prequels did such a action job on the Jedi. It's just disgusting. And yeah, yeah, no, that would have to be the most disappointing thing to me. Yeah, you see it the most with Yoda, I think. Like, wise puppet Yoda from the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, and Kung Fu Kermit from the sequels. It's like, what is this green jumping thing even? It's not Yoda. It's not the wise master. It's just some Kung Fu Kermit. Yeah, no. So that would have to be the most disappointing thing for me. The way that they handle the Jedi, the way they rob the Jedi of everything cool about them.
Definitely a good point there. Glik, what about you?
Well, the prequels are obviously terrible. The latest movie I was not so hot on. It just doesn't feel like it's put together correctly. Like, it feels like it's a Star Wars movie and a Disney movie, and they tried to mash them together, and it doesn't really work out.
I don't know. I think there was far too little singing for it to be a conventional Disney movie.
Well, I think a musical number might have actually helped it.
I don't disagree.
Oh, it sure would have.
All right. RQ?
Oh boy, alright, it's time. Pretty much every decision The Last Jedi made. The only thing that I really liked in TLJ was a couple of sort of the grumpy uncle scenes with Luke and Rey.
You like the milk scene?
I thought the milk scene was hilarious, for the record. But this is things I didn't like. The narrative, as Glick said, and I really liked the way you compared it to like a Disney movie. I never really thought about it that way. But the whole narrative just felt the pacing was so off, in that the first scene was great, and it was setting you up for this like action-packed movie with a lot of stuff going on, and then you were going to see Rey training, and you were like, okay, I'm in. And the first scene sets you up for this great film, this really exciting movie, and then we start getting into Rey training, and it's looking really good, and then it just goes off the rails with doing Luke's character dirty, first of all. The whole thing, even Mark Hamill, before the movie was coming out, he was like, oh, this is he was really not happy with the direction they took the character. And I definitely agreed with a lot of his grievances, especially like the whole thing where he wouldn't come and help his family. That just is, to me, so against the entire being of who Luke is, especially when in Empire he drops everything and runs straight into a trap to help. He didn't even know they were his family at the time, but Han and Leia, who...
Technically, Han wasn't his family at the time.
Oh my god, okay, alright. You get the point, though. And then the whole Finn and... what's-her-face? Rose, right?
Rose.
Yeah, that's her name. They go to Vegas, and that's a whole other thing. I couldn't even remember her name. That tells you how meaningful she was.
She's a Disney character. She's the whimsical girl who leads the guy on an adventure and teaches him about some enlightening thing about life.
Rose is the manic pixie dream girl. Ooh, I like that angle. But yeah, no, like that whole side quest. First of all, the pacing on that is way too slow. And then second of all, the whole narrative makes that whole side quest literally pointless. Which, it's one thing to have a misdirection in a movie, but don't make us spend 40 minutes with a crappy side quest we don't like anyway, only for the narrative to say, hey, that whole side quest was pointless.
Honestly, that part being pointless, I think, was supposed to be the theme for the whole thing. That Star Wars, like the parts we've seen, have all been these 1,000,001 chances, last-ditch efforts that miraculously happen, and this was like, no, that can't happen every single time. That's not how life works.
Yeah, you could do that, but it's not...
I'm not saying it was done well. I think that's just what they were aiming for.
Right, I mean, you could do it better. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. That's a good point that you can't have that be the entire narrative of your movie franchise, ignoring the fact it has been until TLJ. But I think it could have been done better if your pointless side narrative didn't take up so much of the plot and didn't redeem itself. Like, if that had been like an awesome half hour of the movie that was like really endearing and really gave you a lot about the characters, and wasn't just sort of this slow slog like them in jail with Benicio del Toro's character, who I actually liked, but that just seemed like such a random part of the movie. And like, to me, Poe was probably one of the best parts of Force Awakens, and he's really sidelined in this movie. I get the narrative reasoning behind it, to kind of, as you said, sort of show, hey, you can't just have your crack shot pilot doing these crazy stunts, even though they start the movie with it. But it's the same kind of thing. That's not what Star Wars is. Like, Star Wars is your space fantasy with your dashing pilot hero and your Jedi coming to save the day. And I get that you kind of want to take it in a fresh direction, but don't sideline all of the best parts of your previous movie to do that. And that's why TLJ has been such a disappointment to me.
Are you done?
I could take a deep breath and be done now.
All right.
He's also fired now.
Oof, I didn't see that one coming. Not.
Can I say what my least favorite aspect is then?
Go for it.
The fandom.
Oh,
excellent
man.
answer. Excellent answer.
I thought that was going to come from Evie. Oh.
Honestly, I did consider it, but then I figured that someone else would probably cover it, and yeah, I know, it wasn't my short list of possible answers.
I will just defend it and say all fandoms are awful. It's not just the Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, that's one reason why the question was disappointing, not worse. So I'm not really disappointed in the fandom. It's meeting my expectations.
No, that's still a good answer, though. Saph, what about you?
Well, I don't really have expectations. I mean, when I watch a Star Wars movie, I just want to have fun watching it, and I've never... There was never a Star Wars movie for which I was like, nah, I'm not having fun, I'm gonna just stop watching and watch something else instead. So I wouldn't say I've been disappointed with something. There's sometimes some scenes that are too long, like they could shorten them to make some space for, I don't know, more story development or something. But aside from that, not really disappointed in stuff.
All right. Archaic or Eve, did either one of you have anything to add to your previous answers?
Not really, no.
I don't have a mic to drop here, so no.
All right.
I feel like Archaic's answer was a direct response to my rant about TLJ, and I don't know how to feel about that.
That's kind of why he asked to go right after you, yes.
It did feel that way, yes. And you deserve it.
I disagree, but I'll let it slide so we don't keep this question going for another half hour.
All right. Darth, what about you?
What disappointed me? It's actually a hard one to answer. Oh wait, one thing I kind of like on the edge of it, considering that we haven't had episode 9 yet, is the sudden death of Snoke and having no, like, real character for him. We all basically had a few questions after episode 7, like, who were his parents, or just nobodies, which I actually kind of like. Not just a special character, just a regular person. And then you have, like, the question, who is Snoke, where did he come from? Although, it probably will be completely explained in the expanded universe. That's not something you want to explain there and keep it more to the cinematic viewers. Both for those who just only watch the movies and have no interest in watching any of the expanded universe, but also since it seems like a major character, it's basically the new Palpatine. But there's no logic behind him, and then he just dies without any epic satisfaction to the viewer, just there. Besides that, you can expect the classic answers like politics in the prequels, Jar Jar Binks, but I actually kind of like the politic aspect in the prequels, just to see how Palpatine has his scheme to rise through power, and has it in such an ingenious way to do it. And Jar Jar Binks, I can definitely agree that without him, it was fine. You didn't need to add him. You didn't need to add him as like the comedic character, basically, because that he's all for. But he does play a crucial role to the rise of Palpatine, giving him the emergency powers. Sure, you can do it to another character, but the fact that he's there makes it even more reason to hate him, just through the character. And episode 1 specifically, he's just, yeah, you could have just left him out of there, basically. I can agree on that. But that's kind of a mistake. Besides that, not really there are any, like, big mistakes. There are things like Jedi Rock in episode 6, which was later added in, and some other small changes which you can debate if that was better to edit or it should have been left to the original. But that would be a long discussion, so let's leave it down for now. And yeah, besides that, of course, any franchise can have its improvements, but its pros far outweighs its cons.
And as for me, I guess I'm going to kind of go off on a bit of the similar tangent to what RQ did, but I'm kind of going to be targeting pretty much everything except, well, one or two things. But picture a kid who grew up watching his parents' VHS copies of the original trilogy of Star Wars. Then being, the Star Wars trilogy being some of his favorite movies of all time. Finally, he gets to see a Star Wars movie on the big screen in the movie theater. And it's The Phantom Menace. Oh dear Lord, the disappointment was real.
Oh no, that's right. You weren't quite old enough to catch the when they re-released the OT in the 90s.
I am not, no. So the very, very first Star Wars movie I saw on the big screen was The Phantom Menace.
Oh, see, I barely caught it.
And then it was Attack of the Clones.
Oh no, yeah, I barely caught the OT in the 90s. I got lucky that I was just old enough.
I caught just Empire of the OT, but, if there was one that had to be caught, that was the one.
Yeah. So again, that's among the fact that the prequels are in and of themselves are not so good movies in my book. Just the fact that those were the first Star Wars movies that I got to see on the big screen makes them a massive, massive disappointment.
Yeah, I can see why.
And, like we did previously touch on in this conversation, Jar Jar Binks is hands down the stupidest character in the entire franchise, and there's no payoff for putting up with his idiocy. I would have loved for there to be payoff, and he was actually the one pulling Palpatine's strings. I would have loved that. But there isn't. He's an idiot, and that's all there is to it. That's all the depth to his character, and he single-handedly dooms the universe. That's it. Anyway, as far as other things go, Return of the Jedi is still a very good movie. I'm not really sure how I feel about Imperial stormtroopers getting their butts handed to them by a bunch of teddy bears. Seriously.
Well, they get They get their butts handed out to them by everything else, so why not teddy bears too?
But seriously, what good does the stormtrooper armor even do?
Think of it this way.
It protects main characters by making it harder for the stormtroopers to aim.
It allows you to recognize the bad guys.
Think of it this way. It was the Empire's Vietnam.
Well, okay then.
It does make sense, yes.
All right, and with that, I'm going to skip a lot of my pre-written answer and just go straight to The Force Awakens, which, in my opinion, is a travesty of a movie. And I realize this is entirely my opinion in it, and I'm in the vast minority here. But anyway, so again, why do I disagree with a lot of people that actually like The Force Awakens? And I admit, the argument has been made that, Disney was just getting the franchise. They had to stick with what was familiar. So they went and they basically copy-pasted the plot of A New Hope and made it into The Force Awakens. I find that to be very blatant pandering. I find it to be unimaginative, unoriginal, and completely lacking anything that makes me give a damn about any of the characters on the screen. Just as an example, the wannabe Sith Lord is acting like Anakin from Attack of the Clones, and that's not a compliment.
That is also completely false.
He also gets his butt handed to him by someone who's never handled a lightsaber before. And I can't take him seriously as a villain in The Force Awakens. I really can't. And again, when the Starkiller base blows up 10 planets in the middle of the movie, I don't even think they really focus on that. It just kind of happens. And I'm like, oh, did that even happen? Like, what is that? I'm bored. I don't care. When Alderaan was blown up in A New Hope, I cared because it showed how that affected one of the main characters. It showed their distress. The Force Awakens did not do that. And, again, it has the potential to evoke my nostalgia. It has all of that. But if I wanted to evoke my nostalgia, I could literally just go and watch A New Hope, which, in my opinion, does everything that The Force Awakens does, but better.
Okay, so we will now turn to our new host, Enzo, to finish this up.
So, I'm not taking Engineer's job yet, but I did ask for a 30-second rebuttal time, so I'm going to take it because I'm his boss and can do that. A lot of those things are kind of true. It's a one-for-one, it's a shot-for-shot remake. I mean, that's just clear to everybody who isn't being completely biased about it. But they had to do it that way. It was their $4 billion investment. And if they didn't make a safe film, and it bombed like the prequels, that would be catastrophic for Disney. So they knew they had to make a safe movie, and the way to make a safe movie was to follow the formula that A New Hope made perfect. And in the end, it's 90% of what A New Hope was. And considering how good A New Hope is, that's good enough for most people, including me. And I had a blast watching it.
I mean, look, did Disney have to do something that was safe? Yeah, probably. It was a large investment on their part. It was, very important for them to, quote-unquote, get it right. I still don't like movies that are copy-paste of other movies. And, again, if I wanted my nostalgia evoked, I could literally just watch A New Hope on DVD or Blu-ray and not spend $15 to go to the movie theaters.
The thing is, it wasn't just a large investment. It was a large investment on what was, at the time, still a tainted franchise. Because the prequel had done a lot of damage to how people felt about Star Wars. And the main job of The Force Awakens was to say, okay, look, we're putting that behind us. We're going back to what made Star Wars, and what made you like Star Wars.
Good, so go back to that without it literally being a shot-for-shot remake of A New Hope. That's all I'm saying.
It's not shot for shot. It does reuse several elements, that's true, including some very obvious elements, but calling it a shot for shot remake is completely wildly exaggerated.
Then call me the massive exaggerator. But in any case, my point still stands that, in my opinion, everything that The Force Awakens does is done better by A New Hope, and I didn't have to spend $15 at the movie theater to go there.
Only $15, Jesus.
I know. Prices here are a lot cheaper than in some locations, but still.
Are movies only $15 outside of New York? Jeez.
$15 is like what I pay for a month of movies.
Jeez, I hate you all.
I get movie tickets for free.
I don't think I could get a ticket for $15. You bastards.
I know, right? Yeah,
Your Australian dollary dues are all weird.
Yeah, you're talking Australian dollars here.
Yeah, but it's like 23 in New York.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there are, first of all, I'm talking about a basic movie, not like the 3D, not anything like that. Because I don't go in for the whole 3D movie experience. But yeah, I mean, it's also, I believe, a matinee price where I go in, at the lower price. I think standard price is potentially closer to about $20, but point still stands. I spent money to go do something that I could do for free not for free, but I could spend the same amount of money, buy the Blu-ray, and watch it as many times as I want. Which I suppose is potentially something that I could say about why even bother going to the movie theater in the first place, but...
Yeah, because you could do that with Force Awakens now.
I own all of them, so I can do that at any time I want, and I do.
Anyway, I guess just let's move on.
Hey, I was just going to say, at least here in Australia, we've got an excuse for the movie theatres to cost so much. I mean, for starters, they have to make sure that none of the animals get in.
I was going to make a drop bear joke, but you beat me.
No, they're not. The drop bears won't get in, but you don't want a spider on your seat. You don't want a dingo to take your baby while you're watching the movie.
We have to cut just enough of this movie aside to leave the dingo taking the baby part. Just putting
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, goodness gracious. But...
And I'm not even aided by alcohol at the moment.
Anyway, a lot of the things that RQ said about The Last Jedi, I will agree with. Although, like I said earlier, I do actually like The Last Jedi as a movie. But, at the end of the day, the whole... Rose and Finn go to Vegas. The payoff for that was the plan doesn't work, and ultimately, what it boils down to is us getting a lecture on capitalism of all things from Disney.
First of all, you didn't give me acknowledgement on calling it Rose and Finn Go to Vegas. That's my name. Second of all, that was actually my only point.
All right, well, fine.
I don't think the point was supposed to be capitalism is bad. It's supposed to be war is bad. And because of capitalism, both sides of the war are funding horrible people.
Yeah, war profiteering is bad. That's way more the point.
You see, here's the thing, though. You would not have a franchise if there was no war. It's literally called Star Wars.
It's not Star Trek's casually somewhere to the next planet over.
Yeah, I agree. The moral doesn't fit, but that's what it's supposed to be.
That's not the moral I got from it.
The fact that war is necessary to the movie doesn't mean that war is good. I mean, you wouldn't have Saving Private Ryan without a war. That doesn't mean the movie presents the war as good.
I mean, true, but the entire point of Star Wars, at least to a certain, at least from the previous perspective, what was the point of the rebels? What's the point of the resistance? What's the point of any of it? And it's more so fight for what you believe in, fight against oppression. There are times when war is necessary. And to go and counteract that with war is evil, that undermines a lot of the messages that Star Wars used to send.
It's naively simple, like a Disney movie.
Well, of course. And it is a Disney movie, as I mentioned during the last podcast. But, a couple of the other minor things that they did in that movie, like Vice Admiral Holdo being a complete idiot and holding out her plan from her troops just to teach them a lesson. Again, very, very Disney movie-esque.
I just want to point out that, when the enemy force just followed you through hyperspace in a way that's not supposed to be possible, not actually telling people your plan because you suspect there might be a traitor on board might not be the stupidest thing.
But she didn't do it because she suspected a traitor to be on board.
Well, she didn't actually tell us why she did it.
She kind of told Leia that, what's-his-face, Poe needed to be taken down a peg.
So, again, the closest we get to a reason for why she did what she did is because she was trying to knock the ace pilot down. Which, again, that's not how you be an effective leader. That you can knock people down a peg or two without literally putting lives in danger. And I guess, getting back to putting Vice Admiral Holdo in charge, another thing that I disagree with was Admiral Ackbar's off-screen death. Imagine how the movie would have gone if he didn't die off-screen and if he was actually given a proper death. He was in charge instead of Holdo. Then they would have fallen into yet another trap. But
there's the thing with his voice actor, his actor passing on, and it's like that kind of cut options.
Understandable, but it's still, he was a major leader of the Rebel Force. We got to know him in we got to know him in Return of the Jedi. We got to know him from Clone Wars as Captain Ackbar. We got to know him in The Force Awakens, and you just kind of kill off the character without a second thought. And to top it all off, and this is hardly, this really isn't Disney's fault. But to have that whole scene where Princess Leia is out floating in space, and then all of a sudden, Force walks back to the ship. And then, the whole thing about how, first of all, I don't think even the Jedi could do that.
They could in the EU.
Yeah,
that's the EU, which is not canon.
No, there's an episode of Clone Wars where Jedi's actually surviving the vacuum of space.
Plo Koon for a very short period of time, and I believe that's mostly because of his face mask. Not because Jedi can survive without oxygen. If Jedi could survive without oxygen, you would have less problems. Like a lot of the episodes of Clone Wars would have probably been a little different.
That they wouldn't even need those breathers at the beginning of Menace.
She's not out in space all that long.
It doesn't take that long for the vacuum of space to pop your eyeballs and kill you.
As was said to me earlier, it's not science fiction, it's science fantasy.
Yes, I know, but I'm an engineer. I love physics. I love science fiction. But yes, of course, physics does not apply here.
I don't remember where I've read this, but I've read that the whole vacuum of space killing you very quickly thing is kind of really exaggerated. The cold can get you quickly, but the vacuum is not as bad as it's often made out to be.
Then again, we don't actually have any empirical data because I don't think anyone's actually tried it. So.
Well, we can try with any volunteers. They didn't think so.
No, thank you.
All right, no. We'll volunteer Darth, who isn't actually here. No, we're not actually going to do that. All right, so that's. I think that's. I've gone over. I have not gone over my extensive laundry list, but we don't have time for that, so I'll leave it at that and just move on to the next question already, which is, what is your favorite Star Wars video game? And we'll start with Saph on this one.
Well, as I said, I played The Old Republic, and that's the only Star Wars game I played, so that's my favorite.
Fair enough.
Obviously. But I actually really liked it. I spent a good number of hours on it, and actually after rewatching the Star Wars movie this week, today I resubscribed to the game. So guess I'm gonna go back to playing the Old Republic for a few months now.
All right. Archaic, what about you?
X-Wing versus TIE Fighter? Maybe?
Not a bad choice. Although I would have gone with TIE Fighter from that series.
Yeah. Well, I never owned TIE Fighter.
For you.
But, yeah, well. I mean, I've got a soft spot for Knights of the Old Republic, but again, like I said, stupid evil. So,
Well, I think in most circumstances, evil is unlike what they say in Spaceballs, where evil will always triumph because good is dumb. It's actually the other way around.
Yeah,
it's not so much that evil is dumb, just it can be really short-sighted sometimes.
Star Wars evil is dumb.
a lot of evil is dumb because it makes assumption about other people that are just
Wrong.
And well, beside that, some of them are just plain dumb and completely incompetent, which is actually one thing I like about the First Order better than the Empire. The Empire was the Empire made evil too cool. Like I liked the Empire, the Imperial Starship, but like the Imperial fandom cult is like way too big, and yeah, they made evil cool with the Empire, and that's doesn't sit well with me. Whereas the First Order is, well, reflects real world evil that I won't name out of respect for some of us, but it reflects them a lot better in that actually they're dumb. Like they the completely selfish, clueless people trying to that are in way over their head would just luck into some success and then get their butt kicked because they kind of didn't realize that, oh yeah, when we kind of pick on everyone is eventually going to gang up on us.
I suppose that's true.
So yeah,
I mean, it's one thing though. I feel like having your evil be not stupid and compelling adds something to the narrative. And a good Star Wars example of this is Thrawn. Although I think that even brings up the argument: is Thrawn really evil?
he is.
And he is, but he's not in the same evil way as
He's not stupid evil.
but he's like not a monster. He's just sort of he's very pragmatic, and yes, he does some evil things, but he's
Thrawn is proper lawful evil as opposed to the stupid evil that fills most of actual evil.
right. And I think that's I mean, while it's not as accurate to real life, it makes a more compelling narrative
There is that.
for you to be able to say like, okay, like this guy is a real threat, and as opposed to perfect examples, you said the First Order. Kylo never feels like a threat. He's just kind of an emo teen.
Like I said, I can't take him seriously.
Hmm. But I will. I get what you're saying, and it's true. But at the same time, making cool, badass evil villains turn into evil worship, and the Empire is a textbook case of that, where people are like, "Oh, the Empire did no wrong. The Empire was right," and a lot of them actually believe that, and it's spread into the real world mentality, lead them to say that to support. It makes it cool to support other evil, cool, badass things in real life. And I'm not going to name names, but you know the ones I'm talking about.
I mean, I could just flat out say what you're not saying.
Let's not. I mean,
Yeah. Um. So let's kind of bring things back. Evie, what about your favorite Star Wars game?
it's a close three-way race for me. There's Rogue Squadron on the N64 was absolutely brilliant. The first Knights of the Old Republic, because as as Rocket Queen said earlier, Revan was awesome. So definitely a contender there. But while these are two popular answers, I'm going to have to go with one of the more obscure and often disliked one, and go that my favorite Star Wars game is Star Wars Rebellion, which was this old strategy game which put you in command of fleets all over the galaxy, and it was the game that started me on grand strategy, and that became one of my main game scenes. So I played it a lot, and it definitely was the most important for me because it really influenced what I played afterward. So yeah, I would have to go with Star Wars Rebellion.
All right. Glik, how about you?
Well, I'm just gonna say Battlefront 2, so you want to just jump over me, and then I'll be the lead-in to general video games?
Fair enough. RQ, what about you?
So first, I'm gonna give Dragon a shout out. She requested me mention the pod racing arcade game, which was awesome. So beyond that, the ones I played the most is I've put thousands of hours into the Old Republic MMO over the last few years. So much so that I burnt myself out about a year ago. So that's definitely up there. And it's not a video game, but I feel like I have to mention playing the tabletop with my old gaming group in college. A lot of really fond memories there. But my favorite is Knights of the Old Republic for Revan, and that's just pure nostalgia fuel for me. It was like it was my first like BioWare. It was my first BioWare game. It was my first like real Western epic RPG, and it set me down that dark road of playing RPGs that go 100 plus hours and making it so I don't do my schoolwork.
Oh dear. All right. What about you, Darth?
Okay, so I would like and should answer Knights of the Old Republic for the simple reason that I just love BioWare games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age. But for a long time, I wanted to have the game, but never had the opportunity to find an actual copy of it. Then at some point, my uncle had a physical version that he gave to me for PC. I tried to play that, but there was, I believe, something wrong with it. Like, I think it got suddenly like stuck in like the opening mission at the end of the ship. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Then at some point I just decided to buy it on Steam. Just have it, digital version of it as well. Started playing it. For some reason didn't continue it after, I don't know, at least after the shipwreck, but like in the first planet I suddenly stopped playing it for some reason. And I definitely should go back. Besides that, it's something that I would most certainly know it would be my most favorite game if I had the chance to properly play it. But my current plan with the Star Wars franchise is, as I said, I was partially reading the original novelization of Star Wars A New Hope. And so my idea is to go through every expanded universe novel, comic, game, movie, whatever in the order of release, in like real world release. So starting with the novel, then the original movie, and so on. Starting with the old EU, moving on to the current EU, and therefore trying to experience the complete universe and how it evolved over time. This game is definitely in the list, of course, and I want to play it at the right moment. So that's my future answer. For my current answer, that would probably be... It will definitely be Star Wars Battlefront 2, the 2005 original version, just for the fact that I've played so many hours of it. Like, I believe I'm like around 200 hours on Steam, but I've also had a cracked version years ago and was way younger, which I played tons of hours of. Shooters are normally my favorite genre, but this game just got to me, just being able to play in the Star Wars universe, and that just kept growing on me. Second place would probably be the Force Unleashed franchise as a whole, just because you feel like a badass there.
And as for me, my answer to this question is Star Trek Armada. I have not played any Star Wars video games.
I don't even know what that is.
It's a really, well, it's a strategy-based game that's obviously not this franchise, so you and I can talk about it elsewhere, but it actually is one of my favorite video games of all time, as I mentioned in the as yet unaired video game episode.
That's not the MMO?
No, it is not. But yeah, so I guess, stop throwing your Rotten Tomatoes at me. I have not played any Star Wars video games. That's all.
I think I need to gift you I need to gift you KOTOR on Steam by the sound of it.
Well, if you're willing to do that.
It's like $5, so I probably will offline.
All right, well, I guess segueing from video games, we'll go back to Glik, who said we should circle back to him. So Glik, why don't you talk about your favorite choice?
Well, I'm not actually much better than you in terms of video games. I've only played the terrible fighting game, Masters of Terrascasi, the PlayStation 1 version or game of the Phantom Menace, which is just about as terrible as the movie.
Ooh.
And the only good Star Wars game I've ever played was Star Wars Battlefront 2, the original one, not the new one that's causing gambling laws to be rewritten.
I actually thought you were talking about that one and were making a joke, and I was gonna laugh, and now I really like your opinion, and I'm no longer mad at you.
Well, isn't that lovely?